We started as you were coming in with Louisiana Creole music. And as I was searching, as I was reading about Clementine Hunter's life, something that struck me was that she talked about her Creole heritage and about her parents and her grandparents and of the French ancestry that ran in her family. And the more that I read up on it, I read that the Cane River area of Louisiana, which is where the Melrose Plantation is, where she works and lived, and the area where she died, is heavily Creole. So that's why I started searching for this music, and the Smithsonian has this wonderful series called the Smithsonian Folkways. So they have this entire album called Louisiana Creole Music, as if it was made specifically for this purpose. But I will play a little bit, especially for the people who are walking in. When you listen to it, I'm not well versed in music at all. But it has a lot of influences. I know that when I was talking about this era, when Clementine was alive, jazz and blues was something that was really, really coming of age in that part of the country. So let me play a few seconds before I move on. So you can hear more of that on YouTube if that sounds interesting to you. So the painting we're talking about today is called Plantation Life. And this painting is up right now at Intuit in the collection of Victor F. Keane show that we have had since February, and we will continue to have on site until the end of the year. So if you are in Chicago, and once we open up again, you can go see it yourself. One of the challenging things, of course, of doing something online is that you don't quite get the scale, but this is a very, very long painting. It's 78 inches, which is that's over 5 feet. And it is about less than 2 feet tall. So when you approach it, you get this sort of feeling of almost like a scroll, like you're looking at a long painting that guides your eye. And we'll talk more about the way that she organizes the figures and all of the information in the visual representations in her paintings. But I do want to share a little bit about Clementine's life. So here are a couple of great photographs of her. She was born in Louisiana, and very early on in her life, she wasn't even a teenager. She moved to the Melrose Plantation from, let me double check, the Hidden Hill Plantation. Her family migrated to a different place to work. And one of the biggest reasons why her family moved is because they didn't see any opportunities at the Hidden Hill Plantation. They were barely making a living. And if you know anything about this point in time, she was born in 1886. It was, post emancipation, but it was right in the center of segregation, Jim Crow laws, sharecropping. So there was a lot of hardship for people like Clementine Hunter and her family to make a living, and especially make a living in a place where they didn't have to suffer terrible abuses by owners, by overseers, etc. So they got to the Melrose Plantation, and at the time, the plantation was going through this resurgence to become this like arts and literature center. The mistress of the house would invite people to come stay, and they would make art there. They would hold shows. They had a collection. They had beautiful gardens. So Clementine happened to be working at a place that just really had this, like, was an epicenter of culture for I learned how to say this, and if someone's from Louisiana on this call, forgive me, but it's Natchitoches, Louisiana. And right here, Natchitoches, Louisiana. So Natchitoches. Thank you, Cleo. I knew you were going to know because you just sent me a picture because you were there. So this part, she was in Louisiana, and in this region of the state. When they moved, she worked in the fields, and from her accounts and what we know about her through her supporters, she said that she favored picking cotton over mostly anything else. I mean, she would do a little bit of everything around the plantation, but the way that she describes being in the fields and picking like hundreds of pounds of cotton. She had many children, and she talked about how she would work in the fields when she was pregnant, and then give birth in the evening, and then come right back to work the next day. So, her life was just morning, noon till night, hard labor. There was a turning point in her life when she came inside, what they call the big house, from the fields to do more domestic work at the plantation. And there she really made herself known because she was very creative. She would make clothes, she would make doll clothes, she would be very crafty. So, people noticed her and knew that, she was very just like a creative person. And it was around 1940 when she began painting. And the way that it happened, the way that one of her biggest supporters and supporters at the time, his name is Francois Mignon. Hopefully I said that right too. I'm not a Francophile, and in fact, my French teacher always told me that I relied too much on my Spanish for French. But he said that, an artist had left some tubes of oil paint behind, and Clementine asked him if she could take them because she just had these pictures that she knew that she could create with that paint. And the story goes, he says that, he gave her a window shade and gave her some turpentine and the oil paint, and that she came back with a picture like the next day at 5 a.m. And these accounts of how she would work, where she, of course, had all of her duties, super early in the morning into late at night. Her painting time was deep into dawn. She tells a story, Clementine would tell a story about how her husband would ask her to come, like, why is she still up? Like, why doesn't she go back to bed? And she said that she just has these pictures in her mind and she needs to get it done. So she was she was so sure and so steadfast in the painting and the work that she wanted to do. And she needed to create in that moment and in that time that she had, you know, given all of her duties at the house. So she lived until she was 101, and she there are many photographs of her, and all of them, she is definitely a very formidable woman, a formidable artist. So we're back to our painting here. And in the chat box, or, you know, if you'd like to unmute yourself, I want to ask you, what are some of the details that you notice of this painting? And Allison, if you could tell me what people are saying, that would be helpful.
People are noticing the different types of labor that are happening in the painting, the brush strokes, the focus on the work.
Yeah, so
profile.
Right. So I'll start with let me go back. I'll start with the different types of work. If you notice here, we have at least 3 distinct types of work that were happening out in the fields. So you have here this, what do you call it? A little scene of women washing clothes, and they would wash them in these big pots where it's like boiling water. And I was reading that you had to wash it twice, because once it was with, you know, the whatever detergent you were using to clean the clothes, and then the second time around was to remove that. So you have this here like very big cauldron with all of the little fire here that she gives us detail to. And then here you have men and women, and that's something that I actually just realized. The 2 figures up here have pants, and the figures down here, you can see their ankles. So I'm interpreting that as perhaps women here that are carrying these bags that are full of cotton, and they are taking it to the cotton gin here, where you see all of the overflow of the cotton, and then you have these like neatly packed, like already processed packets of cotton that will then ship bales. Bales that will be shipped, you know. So this is part of only one part of the production of cotton and the movement of cotton. And when I was talking about the way that Clementine moves our eyes through this painting, you know, she does give this sense of movement, of going from one place to another. Even though we don't see the field here necessarily, we can imagine that, you know, maybe beyond in that yellow space, that's where the fields may be. What are some other comments, Allison, that I can speak to?
Well, there's a comment about how a full cotton bag was 70 pounds. So thinking about the weight of these bales of cotton, and also about someone noticing the face of the horse and the representation of the painting.
Right. I'm so glad someone mentioned this horse, because I think also someone mentioned it was a mule. Yeah, thanks, Cleo. It was a mule. But because everyone's in profile, and I think someone else had mentioned that people look like they're in profile, and I think that's what also contributes to like that frieze-like organization of everything, that they're only looking one way, and also they're in, I think the correct term is registers, right? Like this is one register and this is another register, and that's how she organized her space. But this animal here is really fascinating, because they're looking straight at us, and they're also close to the center of the painting. So like this focal point of the work. That, you know, I think until this moment, that's when I realized, oh my God, that is a huge focal point.
Well, and
Anything
Paula,
else?
you were mentioning the focal points, and we had a comment about how the pops of red color are taking us through this scene. So another sort of focal point of sorts that guides the eye along. And the
Yeah,
balancing of the black roof from the large black pot.
Could I
absolutely.
comment?
So right here, we have some red clothes hanging on the clothesline. Then we have this red dress of one of the women washing the clothes. Then we have this, the person in the wagon. And definitely here, you have this big focus of red. And it creates this like harmony with the space, you know, that even though, one of the things I was reading a lot was how she doesn't use perspective, and she like, you know, creates her own sense of space. And I think the use of color in this instance absolutely also creates that space. So that's a really astute observation.
Could I make a comment?
Yes, of course.
Okay. What I noticed is that there were beneath the staring horse and the cart, there are women picking cotton. So maybe it was an afterthought. Certainly it's not the sequence, right? You start by picking cotton someplace beyond where the bales are, you know, being created. So I just thought it was an interesting, maybe an afterthought, maybe deliberate, but certainly kind of a fragmentation of the whole thing, in spite of the linear flow through the gin and all that. So
yeah, Richard, I think that we could also, I totally see what you're saying, like right here, the women here. I also just wonder if it's like almost like a sequence, kind of like, I mean, if you've ever read
the
comic
tail and the
books,
head are together, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
the
where
cotton next to where it's going to be shipped from.
right, right.
Anyway, well, that's her
So it's
perspective. Yeah.
right. So it's like a part of a bigger whole. You know, this, I think someone in the comments said that this is like the assembly line, you know, like an outdoor assembly line of this very highly, highly valuable product. I mean, this cotton, when I first saw this painting, I was like, what is the commentary here on cotton as material and it being such a significant part of the formation of this country? And from reading about at least her painting, she didn't quite make a commentary about significance of this or that. I mean, she talked a lot about the fact that she enjoyed painting and she wanted to paint these images that she had in her mind. But one of the interesting things is, and I'll change the slide here. You know, I wish I had like a super, super high definition image, but when you look at this painting, you see that the paint is quite thin, you know, most of the time, like with the green and the yellow, and even that black, you know, you see the black brush strokes and you can still see the brown, even though it's painted over. But this part right here is incredibly dense and thick. It's like she spared no paint whatsoever to put all of those brush strokes with that cotton, you know, so it creates this another sort of point of focus for our eyes, because, you know, everything else is fairly smooth until you hit this like heavy impasto with the cotton. And yeah, this is the finished product, right? So this is the coveted product. But then you also see that impasto here in the part that Richard was pointing out, where the cotton was picked. There's also really heavy impasto there. If you've ever had just like a paintbrush full of paint and you just dotted your piece of paper or your canvas, that's exactly kind of the movement that she uses for that cotton. And she uses it again over here when it's on the cart. and it's a lot more dense, close together. When I was reading about her painting and also about Register and Mignon, who were her big supporters at the time, at least, in what the accounts that we have of them, they both were not necessarily very wealthy men. They were big supporters, and they connected her to opportunities and selling her work and such. But they also bought supplies for her. She was so prolific, made thousands of paintings, that she went through a lot of paint. And some of her paintings have really, really thin layers of paint because, of scarcity being one factor. But it is so interesting that with the cotton here, there's no scarcity here, with the way that she was placing the paint there. So I encourage you, especially once we open again, to come and just specifically look at that and the surface of this painting, which is really, really beautiful.
Now, is the tree there? Is that also thick paint?
It's still pretty smooth. I would say that the other areas of thick paint or thick-ish paint is what Lisa was pointing out. This part right here with the sky, that's where you see some of the color mixing happening. Yeah. And it looks like she's color mixing right on the canvas, right? That's why it gets a little bit of muddy. That's why we get not quite such a smooth sunset here. Let me move on. So one of the things I wanted to see is how images, how did this landscape look to someone like Clementine when she was alive. And I was looking through the archives of the State Library of Louisiana, and I came across many photographs of around this time period. This is in the 1940s. This is around the time she started to paint, actually. She was, yes, 1940s. So I had to double check my notes. This is around the time she started to paint, and this is actually a photograph of a plantation in Arkansas, but it was done by the Works Administration of Louisiana at the time. So here you see that bag here that I think all of you were mentioning as a really, really heavy bag. So when I first saw her paintings, I was like, oh, is she are those bags flourishes, right? Maybe her perception is this, but no, she's very accurately representing that they were long, that they dragged, behind people. So this image made me recall the painting very much. So this is actually a photograph that is pre-emancipation. One of the things that Clementine talks about a lot, at least in the commentary that we have for her work, is that she had a deep focus on work, and work as being what kept people out of trouble, that work was above trying to steal and all those things. And I'm not a sociologist and also not a historian, but when I was looking at these photographs, I was thinking a lot about we have, what we're seeing here is two enslaved people picking cotton, and an overseer who is this man on the horse who kept everyone working and made sure that they worked at their capacity, over their capacity, on the fields. And this overseer person, continued on, through sharecropping, through land leases. So, this system, this economic system continued. And, it really makes me think about this focus on work, work as being central to life and to just existence for many reasons. Four people. Thank you, Mimosa, for looking really closely. We have 5 people, I think.
There's a child in the foreground of the far left.
Right here, yes. We have a child
with a hat
here.
on, and then there is somebody just under the horse on the left, too.
Right.
And then there's the 3, 5, 5. And then there's people in the background, but yeah, there's 5 in the.
Right. So this is a photograph of the 1930s, exactly the way that.
Oh, the church, yeah.
Exactly the same, and it comes from the same region right here, Cane River, in the parish where she lived. So, you know, as I was looking through these archives, just thinking, she is depicting as accurately as possible, you know, what the fields look like. I think it gave me this new understanding of what I was looking at with her paintings. And of course, here you have the animals, again, in the same, they're on the way to the cotton gin, here, a road that will lead them there. And you can look at these photographs. They're all online. The State Library of Louisiana has a really, really wonderful archive.
So she was called Grandma Moses of the South. So she's actually doing the same kind of thing, right?
Yeah, Grandma Moses is often cited when talking about Clementine Hunter's work. And Cleo, can I ask you to tell us what those similarities are that you see in both artists?
They're portraying a period of time, capturing a period in history. And even though, you know, this whole idea of cotton picking and all that is pretty gross, I guess. There's a certain amount of nostalgia in these paintings. I think, you know, I think that these are things she remembers, and not in a bad way, because she gives all that vibrant color and texture to it.
Yeah, Cleo, I'm really glad you brought up that point, because I think that when I look at her paintings, I think about all the dignity in this work, you know, and that the way that, you know, even looking at this scene right here, which is the far right of the painting, you know, imagining what types of conversations were happening here. Like what, you know, there's such a deep, rich history of oral history, of folk music, of spirituals, and all of that is transmitted through these relationships that people had, even through very difficult times. So yeah, she does give us a full picture of plantation life that wasn't like the overseer punishing us, but rather this is our existence, like, and this is how we exist, this is how we move through the world, this is how we make sense of the world. And you know, while work was one of the huge areas of her paintings, she also had more celebratory scenes, like she makes paintings of weddings and baptisms and like going to church and women getting dressed up to go to church. So all those things carry the same sort of dignity and very, you know, keen eye kind of throughout.
Do you know anything about the frame?
I knew someone was going to ask me that. Allison is shaking her head. What do you think about the frame?
I don't know. It looks like it might have been made from something else.
Yeah, so they're pieces of wood. So it's definitely wood that has been like, it has rough edges, or live edges, is that the right term for wood? So the painting's actually further back from the frame because the frame's quite thick.
It
But
has a tongue and groove something on the corner.
I can show. We'll go back to the frame when I show it again, and then
Okay,
we'll see it
okay,
a little
okay.
closer. So here's another photograph that features those big, giant wash tubs right
Yeah.
here, and we have these young children for scale. But this is from Thornhill Plantation, Alabama, in the 1930s. I think I also got it from the State Archives of Louisiana. So, you know, she painted many scenes of work. And here's another one that I think was just sold a few years ago. But again, you have that heavy impasto here. Like you can see the cotton, she treats it in very similar ways with the dotting, the heavy paint. In this one, she even creates other types of spaces. You know, she plays with scale. So right here, you have these women, you know, right in the center, but they're at different scales than the women over here, or the woman who's, I think, feeding these ducks, it seems, or chickens, right here.
Yeah.
And I think Cleo, you
and they're
sent me a
shaking
photograph of
pecans.
it.
The trees,
Oh,
they're shaking pecans off the tree.
Yeah, so pecan picking was really, really huge in this part of the state. And I think she even was, she did say that she didn't mind pecan picking, but that you had to like pick like over 40 pounds in order to make it worthwhile. So like you had to pick in super large quantities for it to, you know, be something that earned money. Geese, that's true. I think they may be geese actually, Deb. So I think this is the Africa House, I think right here, which was on Melrose Plantation, and in there, I believe she painted some murals, and it, you know, it does feature in her paintings. In definitely a few instances, but this is very, you know, this scene right here is very similar to the one in the Plantation Life that we have at Intuit currently. I really love this painting, and I think it was at the National Museum of African American History and Culture not too long ago, a couple of years ago. It's really quite a funny painting because you have this wash day scene here, and you have a woman with a baby right here, and then you have this very kind of funny scene where it's almost like this person is hanging from the clothesline. But they were probably just putting the clothes on there, but it definitely looks like she's kind of hanging from there. What's the house to the right of the Africa House? Let me check, Lisa. I wonder if anyone knows.
They have a picture of that house too, and it looked like it might have been a place at one point that slaves or something might have lived in. It's looks nothing like that now. It's quite run down, but it's still on the place.
You mean this one, Cleo?
The other house. So the big house still looks like that, and then this little white house is just it's still there. I think it's called Yucca House or something.
Okay.
Yeah. I have a picture of it. They didn't keep it up as well.
So I just wanted to show you this, you know, to the point where everyone was making these vibrant use of color, You have also different types of relationships here, like mother and son, or some sort of familiar relationship here. One of the images that really stuck with me as I was reading about Clementine is when she was talking about how she had, her babies, she had her children, and they would come with her to the field, to pick cotton. If they were too young to work, they would, just be like at the end of the line of the cotton, and they would fall asleep and nap in the weeds. And sort of that image of being together made such a huge impact. And I'm still trying to kind of wrap my mind around the just kind of emotional significance of that.
I would say the woman with the baby is a grandmother because she very clearly has gray hair.
Yeah. So in the intergenerational relationships.
Yeah, right.
Here.
So she's taking care of the baby while the mother is, probably washing or doing one of these other activities.
Right. Phyllis, the Africa House, and I think other people in this room probably know a little bit better, but it was on the Melrose Plantation, and it was actually built by the previous owner, who was a Black woman, and it was a house that was modeled after some of the architecture in Africa. And by the time that Clementine lived on Melrose Plantation, it was a little bit run down, and there was kind of storage area for things that people didn't want. But she painted some murals in the Africa House. So I am just going to, as the last bit of our time together, I'm going to read something that Clementine said about painting. I paint just every time I wasn't doing nothing. I'd pick up something sometime I was going down the road and see a board what I could paint on. I'd pick it up and paint on that. I didn't know. And then when I'd paint, I'd give it away. I didn't think, it was worth nothing to keep, and I'd just give them away. I just like to paint. Baby, just give me the paint, and I just like to paint. I paint at night. I mark my pictures at night, get a pencil and mark them by lamplight. Things would come to my mind while I've marked them. It just get in my mind, and I just go ahead and paint. But I can't look at nothing and paint. No trees, no nothing. I just make my own tree in my own mind. That's the way I paint. When I'm painting, it just gets in my mind what I ought to paint. Look like it say, you ought to paint this. Well, I just go ahead and paint that. That's all. But I can't go ahead. Somebody go tell me what to paint and show me how to do it. I can't do that. I don't enjoy nothing much but painting. Don't go nowhere. Anytime I start, I just go ahead and finish. I don't go to dances, don't go to ball games or nothing. Just stay home. So thank you so much. I'm happy to answer any other questions you have. But thank you for being such a great audience. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, this is great.
The picture.
Thank you so much. And sorry I had to kind of be cooking while watching this. It's my night to make dinner. I've been Zooming all day in class and etc. But I just put in the chat room 2 links. The Melrose Plantation is in the Historic Artists Homes and Studios program of the National Trust for the Historic Preservation. And we've been working together as colleagues with their people for a number of years, and they're doing some pretty amazing things. But the one thing I'll mention is that the murals in the Africa House were so fragile that I think they have actually put them in a museum and then made reproductions that are there at Melrose Plantation, which I think is kind of unfortunate. And just, I mean, the work is so powerful and so, I think in a way, like we can think about artists in so many different contexts, like as a folk artist, as an outsider artist, as a like African-American artist documenting a certain time. But I think in terms of the way she documented life, in her life as memories and so forth, could be also really looked at as really important historical documentation. Paula, you brought, with your research, you brought that out so well, and I thank you very much.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, absolutely. I think that we have some photographs, we have some accounts, some stories, music, of course, but visual art like painting, that's rare. And I think it's rare for all the reasons why Clementine didn't start painting until she was much older, in her 50s, you know, because she had to come from the hard labor of the fields into the hard labor of the home. So that's like a really huge, I think, part of why we have so little, you know, of this visual culture. Any other questions or comments?
My picture went away.
Where'd it go, Cleo?
I don't know.
Well, if you do have any more comments or questions, reach out to us, and we'll see you again next month. And next
I have one question, Lisa.
Okay.
When she closes this, those links won't be there. So could you? How you need to put them somewhere where we could get them? So maybe you.
Okay. I'll Paula, if you can email me the group,
Yeah, you can give them there.
and I'll email everyone the links.
Or she could email to everybody or something.
Or she can, or you'll have the links. If you look at artistshomes.org, that's the Historic Artists Homes and Studios program of the National Trust. And
we'll share with everyone who registered, Lisa. I think that's a good way to do it.
Very cool. Okay.
Also, just one other thing that is sad but true is there are such an enormous number of forgeries out of Clementine Hunter's work, and that's been happening for years. There are documentaries about it, so people should just be aware of that. It's happening with so many self-taught artists, Bill Traylor and Lee Godey and Joseph Yoakum. But if people are collecting, buyer beware.
Thank you. All right. Well, everyone have a great night. And
you too, and thank you, Paula.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hi, Cleo.
Hi, Lisa.
I love you.
Lisa and Lisa. I can't see who's talking to me. I got zero picture. Oh well. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Hi, Suzanne.
Now here it is.
I'm in here in the middle of nowhere. It's great to see you folks. I miss you all. Paula, great job.
Thank you so much.
It really was a great program. Cleo, did you get your picture back?
Yes.
Oh, because, you know, that happened to me twice today on other Zoom calls.
What?
Like a little,
I just got it just now.
little blue camera that if you push it usually comes back at the bottom of your computer.
But I just had the first big screen that says "Welcome to Zoom." I mean, it just disappeared altogether.
I know Zoom changes its interface about every day. It's just like really, really hard to figure it all out. But
you can hear us, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I could see you too.
Just the picture went away. That happened to me twice today. Seriously.
I mean, I had a Zoom this afternoon. It worked fine.
It's just something that you don't realize you're touching something on the computer with your
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
But there should be like a little blue camera. If you just look at it, comes back. You know, on the bottom.
So when you look at the frame, see how it's tongue and groove?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right here.
Yeah, I just wondered if it was, from a dresser or something. Drawers.
It's a really good point, Cleo, because it looks like it's handmade to go with the painting, maybe not made by someone else.
Right. Well, the one that I have that Jim gave me is in a really interesting kind of frame too. Jim gave me a Clementine Hunter.
Well,
It was his wife's.
It's a great piece. Jim's wife Annie was from Natchitoches, Louisiana.
Yeah.
And or had relatives there, has a lot of history with Melrose Plantation, and so he visited with Annie often and has a lot of firsthand information. So Paula, Jim is he's a longtime Intuit supporter and everything, but he's 80 and on the other side of the digital divide and doesn't do any kind of email communication. But sometime we'll get you together, or I'll give you his phone number. He could talk about Clementine for hours and has really great memories. And he has just a fabulous Clementine Hunter in his bedroom in Mineral Point of zinnias, of course.
Oh, the zinnias, yeah.
Oh man, that painting
They're
is
so beautiful.
just so wonderful, and that's kind of like it's the beating heart of his home. And
it's also thick. The zinnias. She really layered the flowers.
She totally did, and I borrowed it for a show at the Roger Brown Study Collection some years ago, and it was great because Jim doesn't like to loan anything because he live with it no matter where no matter what. He has a lot of art, but I got to have it opposite my desk for about 5 months. But I had it conserved by what's his name? A Chicago conservator, and he did a really great job. And for those of you that are having Zoom problems, because we all are, because we're in this world, what I do when I get like really frustrated and pissed off, I go to YouTube and listen to and watch Aretha Franklin singing Who's Zooming Who. So, I highly recommend it. It'll lift your spirits hugely. Oh, thanks for bringing us into Clementine Hunter's world.
Yeah. Have a great dinner, Lisa. Thank you for your contributions. Thank you, Cleo, for your contributions. This should always be a conversation. So I'm glad to have you here.
Oh,
Thanks
I love
for
it.
running it that way, and I'm gonna check out sending.
So Widener is next week, right? Or the weekend?
Yes, Widener is going to talk next August 5th.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And it'll be George Widener himself.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. See you later. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Everyone.